Pasensya na. Okay. So, again, sa atin, ulitin ko lang po siguro yung ating 3 ways to add the CSS style. So, we can add it through inline, which is dito po sa ating tag po mismo. Diyan po tayo maglalagay ng ating style attribute. We can also do that using our style tag through the embedded or internal CSS. The style tag will be put inside our head tag. Now, we are currently demonstrating the external CSS. I have here a separate CSS file. So, again, ang gamit po natin dito is yung link tag. We have 2 attributes inside the link tag. We have the rel or the relationship. We also have the href attribute, which will be our locator. We will be locating this specific file so that we can apply all the styles inside this HTML document. So again, the relationship of this file to our HTML document is a style sheet. When we say style sheet po, it just means that this will be a collection of styles. So parang ang sinasabi niya po sa ating HTML document na the CSS demo.css file is just a collection of style. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we will be adding here styles no kagaya po ng ginagawa natin kanina, and there are actually a CSS rules that we will be following for us to apply those styles. And those style rules has 3 parts. So we have the selector, we have the property, and we also have the value. So when we say selectors naman, we have several types of selectors. We have the type selector itself. We also have the ID, the ID selector, the class selector, and the descendant selectors. So when we say type selectors, ang ginawa po natin kanina sa atin pong style tag or inside the head tag is a type selector. So when we say type selector, it targets the elements itself. So for example, the color tag, the PP tag, I will be adding a color. Again, let's have it blue. Just for this demonstration po, no? Again, this is already a type selector. So this selector targets all the p tag inside my HTML document. So again, as part of the rules ng ating CSS, we have here the selector, which is this one. We also have the property, which is the color. We also have value, which is the color blue. So again, we've followed these style rule here, wherein we have the selector. In this example, this is what we call the type selector, the property, and the value. So for us to add another, there are several naman po, no? For example, yung nakikita po natin ngayon, once we type a letter sa atin pong IntelliSense type po ng ating text editor, all of what's inside is what we call its property. So lahat po ito pwede natin gamitin. So let's try po again yung ating text align as the property with the value of center. Again, this will be added to our HTML document na. So questions so far sa atin pong type selectors. Okay, so if there will be no question, let's move po sa ating ID selector. Let me just add a div tag here. We'll be removing the class attribute. I will be replacing it with an ID. So I will name this ID as a sample div. Ayan. And I will be adding an h1 tag here. So for example, this is a heading level 1. Ayan. I will be adding this paragraph tag then inside. Okay, so let me just refresh my page. So although this is inside our div tag na, though again, ang sabi ko nga po kanina, this kind of selector, ang gagawin niya is hahanapin niya po lahat ng ating p tag sa ating HTML document, then this style will be applied. Though again, this p tag is inside our div element, ito, this will still be considered as part of the HTML document, kaya po meron pa rin siyang kulay. So let's demonstrate naman po yung ating ID po for now. If we will be adding style using our ID selector, we will be starting it with a hashtag or a pound sign. After the hashtag or the pound sign, then ilalagay po natin yung name na inilagay po natin as the value of our ID. So in this case, it is sample div. So we will be using this one. And after our hashtag or pound sign, ilalagay ko po yung ating sample div na ID. Inside here, pwede na po akong maglagay ng style. So, as you can see po, no, lahat po ng nasa loob ng ating div naapektuhan po nung changes. Kasi again, ang ginawa ko po this time, yung ating ID na sample div, I put a style here na magkakaroon po siya ng background na gray. So, if I will be doing this type of, for example, tanggalin ko lang po muna ito. So, sa aking sample div, maglalagay din po ako ng text align to center. So all of our elements inside the div has that specific style. So pag, ayan, ni-maximize ko yung aking browser, as we can see, nasa center po yung ating dalawang element. So whatever is inside under my sample div ID, lahat po yun makakakuha ng effect na nilagay po natin or makakakuha ng style na nilagay po natin during the CSS here. Nasusundan po ba?
Opo, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So next, let's go ahead po sa ating class selector naman. So when we say class selector, it can be anything, no? Hindi naman siya need to be unique. For example, I will add here a class. ID lang po ang magiging, for example, this will be the first class. If I will be adding style to this specific class, I will just be using that class. I will be starting it with a dot symbol or the period symbol po natin. Then after the period symbol, the name of the class, which is the first. Whatever I put inside this specific first class, whatever I put inside our curly brackets will be applied to this specific class lang. For example, I'll add here a text size or font size po pala, font size to 200%. If I refresh my page, this specific p tag lang po ang nagkaroon ng changes. So, ayan. Ito lang po ang merong first class. But try po natin siguro dito if there will be an effect po, no? Same po ng class. So, as you can see, meron din pong effect sa atin pong p class, which is outside the div tag po. So, again, kukunin niya po lahat ng merong class na first. Hindi naman po siya sensitive na dapat unique po yung ating class, pero yung ating ID po, sensitive po yun, dapat unique po siya. So, sa estimate, we should only have one sample div ID. But sa atin pong class, we can have several first class, kahit magkakaparehas po yung class. And pag naglagay po tayo ng style, lahat po ng may parehas na class this style will be applied. Parang po ito, though this is under or inside our div tag, this is outside the div tag, but both of this paragraph tag has the first class, ito po. So both of this p tag has a size of 200% sa kanilang font. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Opo, sir.
So after our class selector, we also have what we call the descendant selectors. So when we say descendant selector, for example, I have here, let's use a text formatting of emphasis tag. So EM, ayan. So if I refresh my page, this has been a emphasis tag na nagkaroon na po siya ng emphasis tag natin, nagkaroon po siya ng changes. So if any case na itong word lang po na to ang lalagyan ko po ng change, we can use a descendant selector just to separate this specific word. So to check po muna, no, the EM tag is inside our P tag, which has a class of first. And this P tag is inside our div tag, which has an ID of a sample div. So for us to apply changes sa specific EM tag po na to, what we can do is do the descendant selectors po na tinatawag. So for example, since it is inside our div tag, let's use first the ID, which is sample div. And this specific word, which is inside our emphasis tag, is also inside our P tag. And that P tag has a class of first. So, ilalagay ko po yung class ng ating P tag. Tsaka ko po ilalagay yung ating element. So, for example, let me just make this a comment for us to see the changes. Ayan. Let me refresh my page first. Ayan. So, I will just be adding a color to this specific word lang na hindi po madadamay yung ating buong paragraph or yung ating buong div dito. So, again, ang gagawin po natin is since nasa loob nga po siya ng ating paragraph, which is an ID of first, yung ating paragraph naman is inside our div tag, which has an ID of sample div. So let's add a color po, no? Let's add a change, for example, an orange color. Ayan. If I will be refreshing my page, as you can see, itong word lang po na to ang nagkaroon ng changes. Again, this is what we call a descendant selector. This here are all what we call the selector. Ito pong ito. This is a selector. We also have the property and the value here. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir.
Nasundan po ba yung ating
Opo,
descendant
sir.
selector?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, we've also demonstrated comments na rin. No? Again, ito po yun. So, sa comment po natin, pag wala po tayong ending comment symbol, all of this will be considered as comments. So, kailangan po natin i-close yung ating comment tag by using the asterisk and the forward slash. So, the start is the forward slash and the asterisk, then the end would be an asterisk and a forward slash. Again, since this is a comment, it will have the same, it will have the same use ng kung ano man po yung gamit natin sa other programming languages. For example, the Java. Kung ano po yung gamit po natin doon for the comment, yun din po ang gamit niya dito. So, mostly, it is just used to explain your code. Maglalagay po tayo ng comments again to explain the code. This will be again completely ignored by the browser Wala pong kaso to kahit maglagay po kayo ng kung ano-ano po dyan, as long as it is a comment, this will be completely ignored by the browser. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Opo, sir.
Okay, so again po, when we say cascade po naman, it will be the final appearance po ng ating web page. So whatever the result of our styling, it will be called a cascade. So for example, no, for now, we've added a CSS. So if for example, this will be the final output of our web page, this is already a cascade. The result of the output or the result of our styling rules sa atin pong web page. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question po or clarification so far? So, kung wala na po, let me just do a recap po to of what we have demonstrated po today. Yes, Miss Makaraeg, you're raising your hand.
Sir, dun po sa descendant selector, wala po pong pagkakaiba kung tinanggal po yung hashtag sample div po tapos period first po.
So, let me just share my. Okay, so you were asking kung wala pong pinagkaiba pag tinanggal ko po itong hashtag as well as the period, tama?
Pati po yung sample div po, pati po yung first.
Sige, try po natin. So yung EM lang po, tama po ba? Yung EM lang yung matitira.
Yes po. Descendant selector pa rin po ba yun?
Try po natin ganito. So si EM tag ay ganito nga, ito nagkakulay pa rin siya. Kasi again, pag ang gamit po natin is yung type selector, this will be considered as a type selector na. So this is the element that we were using. Pag ang nangyari po kasi nagdagdag pa po ako ng isang EM tag dito, kunyari po sa ating second paragraph, another EM. So both EM will have this specific color. Pero pag ang ginawa po natin, yung kanina, let's try. Where is? So, ito lang po ang nagkaroon ng changes kasi po again, we've made yung selector po natin. Ginawa po natin siyang specific na itong EM lang daw inside our paragraph, which has an ID of first, which is again inside our sample div, which has an ID of sample div. So, ito lang po ang lalagyan natin ng changes. So, yung isa pong EM natin sa baba will not be affected of that change. Nasundan po ba? Kasi po pag type selector po, again, yung ating gagamitin, lahat po ng EM tag or yung ating emphasis tag inside our HTML document will be affected of that change. Lahat po ng changes will be applied to that specific type. Nasundan po ba?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question po or clarification pa po so far? Okay, so kung wala na, let's just go ahead and do a recap po. No, we've demonstrated po today the 3 ways for us to add the CSS style. We've demonstrated the inline, the embedded or internal, as well as the external CSS. We've also demonstrated po today the different selectors. So we've demonstrated the type selectors that targets only the elements. We've also demonstrated the ID selectors wherein we will be using the hashtag sign or the pound sign. The class selector, we will be using the period or the dot sign for that. And the class selector can have the same name. lahat po ng meron pong name ng ating class selectors will be affected with the design. We also have the descendant selector. So, for example, yung tanong nga po ni Ms. Makaraig po kanina, as we can see sa ating output po, since in-specify ko po na dapat nasa loob ng po ng div, nasa loob ng paragraph na to ang magkakaroon ng changes na emphasis tag, ito lang po yung ating nalagyan ng kulay. So, again, question for clarification before we end this synchronous class.
They just make a, let's say, for example, community portion within your, let's say,
Okay,
community.
so kung wala na pong question or clarification, again, I will be seeing you tomorrow para naman po sa ating Comprog 1, which is Java. And again, thank you for attending this synchronous class. Kahit bedtime weather po siya, masarap matulog. Thank you for waking up early. So kung hindi pa po kumakain, kung hindi pa po nakakapag-almusal, you can do it now. Maraming salamat po, mag-ingat palagi at bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Sir, anong sauce ng background niyo, sir?
Bye, sir.
Ano po?
Anong sauce ng background niyo, sir, kanina?
Background ng alin?
Grabe.
Doon sa
Grabe, Vince, pati yun? Pati yun, tatanungin mo?
Ano daw?
Yung background niyo, sir, sa laptop, tingnan niyo, sir, anong sauce nun?
Saan daw sir nanggaling?
Ano yan? Bongo Stray Dogs. Underrated
Seryoso?
anime. Underrated anime but one of the best. Try
Grabe,
naman. Meron na po yung 3 season, nag-promote pa. So, again, nag-promote pa dito eh. So,